Welcome all. We will get started here in just a couple minutes. Let us know if you have any problems with audio or can't see things. Try to get those worked out before we get started. We'll get started in another minute. Good morning, Anita. Thanks for being here. Hi, Joy. All right, we will start in 1 minute. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. In the interest of time and to be respectful of getting out of here on time, we've got a lot of things to share and talk about today. So go ahead and start. So welcome everyone. My name is Chad Childs. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm with Prevention Initiatives at Wichita State's Community Engagement Institute. We're happy to be here with you, and we know the right people have gathered here today to help make the most difference in our families and the families of those we serve. This series is being provided at no cost to you for the purpose of engaging others to continue the work of promoting behavioral health and prevention supports in our families and communities. Prevention Initiatives, or PI, is dedicated to supporting partners in using evidence-based and best practice prevention and promotion strategies, working together to build healthy communities. And through partnership, connection, and guidance, we specialize in behavioral health promotion and awareness campaign development, prevention strategies, project management, social marketing for behavioral health change, and youth-led behavioral health group development. We've been partners with the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office recently in efforts of community building and violence prevention. Hope Starts Now Kansas for responses to parents who are pregnant and concerned about opioid use, additional opioid misuse strategies like Learn, Lock, Lead, and Operation Prevention, and the Kansas Prevention Collaborative. We've become aware of the significant challenges facing youth, young adults, older adults, and families by blood and choice in today's cultures. This is our first service prioritizing families and promoting prevention strategies to help families seek help and experience belonging as they are doing the best they can in their situations. We're a close-knit team of behavioral health professionals and people who value the healing power of relationships. For more information about our team and work, we'll share the website address to Prevention Initiatives in the chat, and I'll share that here in just a little bit. These days are tough. We're pulled in so many directions and may find ourselves tempted to multitask during these hours together. We understand that and only ask that you be as present and engaged as you're able during this time today. We assume most of us are familiar with Zoom meetings at this point and ask that you mute your microphones unless you're intending to be heard by everyone. We also encourage you to turn web cameras on if you're able and willing, as it helps with engagement, support, and being able to be more fully present when it's more close, like we're being in the same room, as close to that as possible. That's your choice though, and we respect whatever you decide. Please use the raise hand feature and other reactions features in Zoom as you like. And if you have any questions about how to set up or use your view on the screen or any other Zoom features, send a chat message to everyone for anyone to help, or you can send one to me, Chad Childs. With a goal of growing, nurturing, building, supporting, cultivating, and bolstering families with resources and tools to face today's challenging times. We really appreciate you joining us to promote family attachment and build our community's resilience to love our kids in 2022. This 4-week set series of 1-hour sessions will be on every Wednesday in September. It's especially for family and children's service providers, faith-based communities, school staff, civic and community organization volunteers, parents, parent group members, and anyone who offers support to their family or those of others. The sessions are all connected to each other, and we'll cross-reference those connecting points as we go through the series. The main topics of these 4 sessions are the case for prevention, which is what we're here for today. Prevention tools for families will take place next Wednesday, the 14th, be followed by healthy boundaries, preventing family violence on the 28th. These sessions are being recorded and will be sent out. A link to the recording will be sent out to your email addresses later for future viewing, review, or sharing with others. The recordings will focus on the primary screens being shared, and your image or name may show on the recording only when you are speaking. We love and value our families and the impact they have on us and can have on the future. You care about families too and want the best present and future for them. We consider it a privilege to work together with you on using prevention tools and strategies to equip them and us to increase their chances for strength and resilience. And at this time, I would like to introduce Georgina LaFoe, who will facilitate today's special section.
Sorry, couldn't get off mute there. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to see you all. I love seeing your beautiful faces. Again, welcome. Thank you, Chad, for that introduction. I really appreciate that. And yeah, as the screen has, I would love to jump into some cultural introductions. So I saw some of you have already put your name and your position and workplace. I would love to see either or, what is a tradition you had while growing up, or a saying that your family had that you remember. So just drop those in the chat. I would love to take a look at some of them, see how we can find our similarities. As we're waiting for that, I will share mine. So again, my name is Georgina LaFoe. I am the Community Program Specialist here at WCCEI. I would say my father, who was a Vietnam veteran, he would always joke around with us and say, if you listen to what I say, when I say, and how I say, we might make it out of this alive. And as scary and terrifying and yet funny as that was, he would always follow up with, as long as you adapt, adjust, and overcome, you can make it through. And so that is something I've carried with me throughout my entire life. Anything big comes on, I will just adapt, adjust, and overcome and move forward. Okay, I see a lot of good ones coming in. Let's see. Breakfast every morning before school. That's such a nice thing to do with your family. I think that really builds those relationships. I love that. Ice cream before bed. Yes, Janelle, I can add the French fries in there. Oh yeah. Let's see. Chad, you said always forgetting the worst of Frosty the Snowman. How? How do you do that?
Really good at it.
Going out to eat once a week. I love that. Yes, I love to go out and eat food. It's not the best in pricing, but it's definitely fun to do. I'll read a couple more here coming in. Hot pot every Christmas Eve. Anita, what is that? A hot pot? I've never heard of that before. Let's see. Oh, you guys are funny. The same Mexican restaurant every Friday night? Wow, Trina, that's intense. It might get old to me, but I love the tradition. Asian soup, that's a good one. Wow, you guys just go and go. I love it. Birthday dinners always, yes. I love that because really it's super easy to find how we are similar to each other, right? All of us do a lot of the same kind of things, and it makes life a little more interesting when we can see each other from a perspective a little further deep down than that first impression. And so I would like to go ahead and jump in here, and Chad, I will have you go ahead and make sure we're seeing what's in the chat, because I won't be able to see it once I get in here. But I really appreciate your guys' introductions, everyone. Again, I think it's important to not only know what we're talking about here today, which is supporting families through prevention, but also how as a collective species, we understand each other's similarities and differences in order to feel connected. Connections is super important protective factor, which we'll get into later today, but we will go ahead and jump into our objectives. So next, Chad. So first things first, what is prevention anyways? That is the big question. So it's kind of a running joke here in our area of work. We would love to say something simple when people ask, well, what do you do? But unfortunately, it's just not that simple. You have to go into details and a bunch of evidence-based, trauma-informed things that people don't always find interesting. And so we will really delve into that today. We will look at what prevention is, how it relates to us and those we work with, and then finally how to do it. How do you do prevention? I do want to go ahead and open up, however, a time for questions, maybe hopes that you had coming into the presentation. That way, if it comes up later, I can really hone in on that and make sure that everybody gets to leave with something they found interesting. Was there any questions or hopes that we had? I'm checking the chat. Okay, then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, next, Chad. And so we'll start off with just diving in. Let's get our thoughts thinking with the question, what things can be harmful to a family or family unit? Does anybody want to take a guess? Shout it out. You can feel free to come off mute too. I love when people interact, so don't think you have to use chat. A lot can be harmful to a family, right? So Chad, if you could click 6 times, I have 6 examples of what could potentially be harmful to a family. Yeah, so I have struggles with mental health, violence, traumatic events, negative communication, isolation, and even lack of acceptance, right? So these things can be super harmful to a family because if they're experiencing one or more of these items, their basic needs aren't being met, like safety. Next. So as we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, without the basic needs being met, we can't climb that pyramid and get to that self-actualization or that transcendent area.
Oh. Sorry to interrupt. We have a lot of responses in the chat as well.
Okay.
Financial burdens, generational abuse, generational poverty, low levels of attachment. Let's see.
Nice.
I lost my list.
Homelessness, yes. Toxic behavior, yes. These are great examples. Thank you all. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a different slide set than you guys, so I couldn't see that. Yes, those are great examples. I love that. Chad, yeah, thank you. Yeah, if we compare these kinds of examples to hitting those basic needs and becoming what we really want, which is that self-actualization piece, then that's really what matters when we're building our relationships, not only within our own families, right, but with the families that we might be working with. So thank you for those examples, everyone. I really appreciate that. And so let me jump back over here to my set. Excuse me. Does anyone want to give an example of those kinds of harmful things or harmful examples? Something that might have happened in the past, or just a time that you might have saw this when you were visiting with a family? I'll check the chat.
Like your house burning down?
Yes, absolutely. That's super traumatic, right? If we don't have our own home where we feel safe, how are we supposed to work on other things, right? That's a great one. Is there any others?
Having a family member become incarcerated and no longer part of the family.
Absolutely, that is very true. And we know that there's a lot of evidence behind that as well, and how that can play out with a family and especially the children, right? Yeah, thank you guys. You guys are all so smart. I love it. So thank you for your examples. I see here trauma of traveling into another county and leaving children behind. Yes, absolutely. Working with a family with a generational history of domestic violence, living in denial. Yes, I have seen that time and time again where mom or dad, whoever is in the violent relationship, they just don't see it right. They just don't know how to get out of that. Those are wonderful examples, everyone. I really appreciate you. And so, Chad, next, if you could. Okay. So how does this really play out with family dynamics? So first of all, let's learn what are family dynamics. Chad, click. Let's start with the literal definition. So the processes by which family members influence each other's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and the changes in the family relationships that these processes bring. And so I've highlighted two really important words here, which is processes and changes. So what are processes? I have a couple examples here, but processes can look like patterns of communication, boundaries, parenting styles, coping and bonding methods like attachment styles. And so when we're thinking about those kinds of processes and how they look in any particular family dynamic, let's use an example. So if we use patterns of communication, if there's a parent who always talks really loud and they have a lot of body language, that can be misunderstood, right, as angry or aggressive, even if they're not trying to be. A different example might be parenting styles. So we know we have 4 established parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and then neglectful. So let's say we have a permissive parent, and they say, yeah, I have a 15-year-old son who likes to drink, and, I let him because I'd rather him do it at home. But his friends come over and I don't want to say no because I don't want to be, not the cool parent. Excuse me. But then that can become a problem, right? As they go further in life and they check out different world situations and see that authority that child knows from home, that family dynamic, is a lot different in the real world. And so that's why these processes can be super slippery, or a slippery slope. And it's especially important as an outsider or someone working with a family to understand that you can't just walk into a family and say, you've done it this way always, but you're wrong, and now you need to do it this way. That's not going to build over very well. So it's important to understand these dynamics within the family so that person can then be met where they are mentally or physically, which is called that person first or person-centered perspective. That will add value to the trust and the safety needed to work with the family or within your own family, because we all have things going on in our families, right? So does anyone want to come off mute or in the chat and describe how family dynamics might be important to understand? Maybe an example that you've had in your own past or currently even? I'm checking the chat here.
Hey, Verdina. I would say, just in my own experience, understanding family dynamics of other families, because of course, the family we grow up in, we know that dynamic.
Yeah.
And when we're not exposed to other dynamics, we think whatever we grew up in is normal. And so learning about other family dynamics can be a positive for understanding whether the dynamic you're in is healthy or not healthy.
Absolutely, Janelle. You actually hit it on the nose, exactly where I was going with that. So thank you. Yes, that is exactly right. Oh, I see one in the chat. Let me pull it up here. Can someone read that out loud for me? I saw something pop up.
Yeah, David posted, I've encountered cultural differences in how family dynamics differ greatly.
Yes, absolutely. And Olivia, yes, thank you. I love this. I love talking with everyone. I could talk about this all day, but we don't have all day. So let me move on. But yeah, that's exactly right. It really matters to understand that. So you know what you're walking into and you know that you're not stepping on any toes, but you're able to effectively and positively help and change what might be going on if it's a crisis or so on and so forth. So Chad, can you hit next, please? So as far as, oh, I think I see something different here. Hold on. Okay, yeah. So as far as family dynamics go, if we continue on into how to understand the real world, let's use that same example that we used on the previous slide with the child who is a permissive parent. So again, once that child goes out to school or work and they come across some sort of authority that is very controlling compared to what they're used to, it can really confuse that child or that youth into wondering, you know, why is school this way? Why is it this way? I don't like this. It's different from what they've known from birth and what they consider normal. So perception of behavior is super important here too. If I'm someone who grew up in a home where family talked very soft and rarely criticized me, and then I come across a classmate who they talk loud all the time and they have to point out every single thing I do wrong, that can start to feel really targeted and spiteful even. And so that's just a difference in our communication patterns, but it can really be misinterpreted by the other person, right? Because it's not what we're used to. So that's why it's important to understand family dynamics and how they affect us in the real world, but also depending on how different those dynamics are, it can affect our own well-being drastically. Because if I feel that way about a classmate, I might not want to go to school because I feel like, oh, they're a bully. I feel like I'm being bullied and I don't like going. And that's not good, right? And so that is why it's important to understand where these kinds of dynamics come from, why everybody feels different maybe, and then kind of moving forward into a development mode. So Chad, can you next? I'm going to double check where you're at. There we go. Thank you. So taking a look at the psychological effect of our family dynamics and the interactions that they have on our development. Here I have a study from the University of Oregon that shows negative effects of a parent's fight can impact children as young as 6 months old. And of course, negative impacts go from infancy to adolescence. And I'm sure a lot of us here on the call today would say that we've seen those effects go all the way into adulthood as well. And so my question for you would then become, how could we see these dynamics affecting a developing child? Next. So as our social learning theory shows us, we learn by observing, internalizing, and then imitating. So does someone want to go off mute or in the chat and give an example of when they might have seen this kind of model be demonstrated? You might have saw a youth or an adult do that feedback loop of this particular theory. Okay, I see what you said. Can be a neurological difference for sure.
Georgina, I think an
Yes.
example, my
I can hear you, but it's like echoing.
Problems on the mic there. Is this similar to that, like serve and return, like the mom smiles at the newborn baby and the newborn baby smiles back kind of thing, or is this a different direction?
It can be, yes, absolutely. That stimulus, which would be the smile, can definitely be observed, and then they internalize that and imitate it back. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you, Olivia. I'll wait to see that real quick. An example that I have seen this demonstrated, I used to work at a children's home. And so a lot of times we could understand the kind of environment a child was coming from, especially if they were a toddler, by how they acted, right? Their behavior. If they said cuss words or really inappropriate things a lot, it was definitely a key thing to us that, oh, that's probably what they were around a lot. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been imitating it and using it in these kinds of situations. And Olivia, I see you said lots of times when codependent relationships are modeled between parents, the child imitates the same thing in their romantic relationships as adults too. Exactly. That was kind of the piece I was going with when I say we see this into adulthood even, because again, we internalize that as the normalcy. Therefore, we think that's what we need to find out there. And sometimes it can also be just pure habit. We don't understand that there is different dynamics out there. And Joe, if you grow up in a family that settles things by yelling when you have a relationship with someone who doesn't yell, or kids, oh, it left, get in an environment where no one yells, it can seem very foreign and be very uncomfortable. Absolutely. You guys are on the dot. I love it. So yeah, really, we're just relating family dynamics into the development piece of us. So how are we growing up and internalizing it in our brain to understand how the rest of the world works, right? And so it can be super easy to make what we become our normal. Therefore, imitating it can be a difficult feedback loop to break, especially as we get older. And so those habits can be harder to change. And chat, I will have you go ahead and click next, please. So, yes, perfect. Thank you. So what about a difference in perspective here? I call this difference in perspective because change in perspective can really be what you need to understand prevention. And so here I have a quote from SAMHSA, their National Child Traumatic Stress Initiative, say that fast, Understanding Child Trauma, that states, a critical part of children's recovery. Oh, I will have you click next if it's still blind for you. Yeah, there you are. Next, one more time. Yay. Okay. So as I was saying, an estimated 26% of Americans aged, oh wait, we are on difference in perspective. I'm sorry. I'm switching between two slides here, everybody. I apologize. You're right. Yep. Okay. So the quote is, a critical part of children's recovery is having a supportive caregiving system, access to effective treatments, and service systems that are trauma-informed. And so I want us to pay attention to the verbiage here, the word recovery. So when we define that, that means a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. So to change perspective here, what if we knew how to live in a relatively constant state of healthy mind and body? That's not to say, though, that, you know, life doesn't happen and people don't react. Things can always happen. But it's more of a question of, can you reflect on the possibility that maybe we can supply communities with more resources to maintain and sustain healthy mind and body? Most of us probably have heard that it's easier to raise healthy children than it is to recover hurt ones, right? And so that is that difference in perspective that I am talking about. Chad, I will have you hit next. Double check we're on the same one. Perfect. Okay. Cool. So when we look at prevention, we can look at it like a giant puzzle. So has anyone ever gone to build a puzzle? You get about halfway or a little further and you realize pieces are missing. It really sucks, right? So oftentimes we need to check to see if it's been opened or the pieces are missing. So we're going to look at prevention kind of like a giant puzzle, and we want to make sure we have all the pieces. So I will have you hit next. Perfect. Okay. So using this statistic to help us see the larger picture before we accumulate the smaller pieces of it, an estimated 26% of Americans aged 18 and older, which is about 1 in 4 adults, suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder in a given year. So thinking about family dynamics and what we've talked about, how the statistic could lead to a disruption in the hierarchy of needs, we have what we call a risk factor. So let's use a case study format to understand this, this specific statistic, but also our risk factor. So I will read it out to you. Let's see. In our case study, we will have an expecting mom and expecting dad. Both are very excited to start a family. The pregnancy goes well, but the mother begins to experience these changes in her mood. Fast forward to when the baby is born, the mother experiences drastic change in her mood, interest, motivation, and more. She states to her partner, you know, I feel sad and upset, but I don't know why. I can't quite put my finger on it. So this goes on for several months, causing several arguments between the couple and making individuals feel less attracted to each other. It can cause fights, which can eventually lead to deceitful behaviors and even self-harming behaviors, right? And so, as we know, depressive symptoms often co-occur with substance misuse as well. So this could eventually lead to neglect of the child. So although we know that this scenario might feel like a lot, especially to the couple, areas of these changes can be defined, right? The changes that the mother was most likely experiencing can be called postpartum depression. But since neither of the couple was made aware of the postpartum depression, the woman suffered through it long enough, could be months, years, until it became more severe, like clinical depression. So as mentioned, these mental health struggles can lead to really harmful results, such as substance misuse, overdose, and even neglect. And as we learned earlier, children who are 6 months of age and older can really negatively be affected by this as well, causing them to build their own unhealthy behaviors and coping mechanisms because they internalize that as the normal. So the risk factor that potentially caused all of this was that mental health struggle and the lack of knowledge and resources to help with that postpartum depression. So now that we've looked at what a risk factor can do, let's look at something a little more positive. Chad, I'll have you click next. And yep, perfect. So a big part of prevention is not only being aware of the problem, but thinking ahead about what future problems could arise and how to stop them before they do. So I think of prevention as coupling hope that things can change with the action of making that change. And so it can be super easy to fall into that trap of the world's falling apart, everybody's doing this, and I just feel awful. But in reality, there's a lot of good evidence showing that people do care, people are trying. And I love to think of prevention as positive history in the making, because that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're doing positive change, positive, what will soon be history, and it is current in the making. So let's define what prevention is exactly. Chad, next. Thank you. So quite literally, pre means before, invention is something to occur. So we want to work on something before it occurs. Does anyone want to go off the chat or the mute and the chat and answer, how could that family in the previous example have been helped by prevention? Anybody want to take a crack at it?
Could the parent have been offered some sort of parenting classes to be less permissive of the youth?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was Pam, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Pam. Yes, absolutely. On the nose. Any other ideas? Okay, I don't see anything coming in. So yes, essentially, that is exactly the kind of prevention effort that might have prevented that family from dealing with what they had to deal with. Chad, next. So here we've had an example of a risk factor. So let's go over what a protective factor is. So a good protective factor for the previous example, as Pam stated, was having community support to help the mother and the families learn and understand what postpartum depression is and how it deserves attention and help. So my question to you all would be then, specifically, what could have happened if the expecting mom was aware of what postpartum depression was? She would have recognized it. Exactly, Cynthia. Thank you. Yes. And
She
what
might
about
have-
the father? Oh, excuse me.
Oh, and I said she might have discussed it with her physician and got some resources.
Yes, absolutely. The resources are the big one. Thank you for using that word. And what about the father? Had he known about postpartum depression, what do you think might have happened? Or how could he have helped? Had the feelings normalized? Yes. Absolutely. Any others? You would have been prepared to help the mother. Exactly, guys, you're right on it. If the dad was able to help or know what was going on, he could have brought the mom to where she needed to be, and vice versa. If the mom had known, she could have gotten some resources as well. So yeah, that work to mitigate the woman's clinical depression that started by postpartum depression, that is prevention right there. And so Chad, can you click next? So I kind of tricked you all into using the terms, perhaps maybe before we knew truly what they meant. So here I've defined what protective and risk factors are. And so risk factor, something that increases risk or susceptibility. So our example of our risk factor was the unawareness of the postpartum and then the clinical depression that the mom was dealing with. Protective factor, conditions or attributes that help people deal more effectively with stressful events and mitigate or eliminate risk in families and communities. So as we said again, we may not be able to change that mental health statistic just yet, but professionals to teach that knowledge to the expecting family so they knew how to spot it, where to get help, and when help was needed would have been a great protective factor, right? So to get down to the nitty-gritty of prevention, next, Chad. Who can do it? Who can prevent? Who can place protective factors in place of risk factors? Next. The answer is anyone. Anyone can do it. Anyone can be a preventionist. Neighbors, parents, educators, you all. Anyone can do it. Why? Because prevention is essentially awareness, education, and guidance. That's what helps us prevent bad things from happening or becoming worse. And all of us can do those things. So how is our question? Next, chat. So awareness is going to be the number one first action step. Becoming aware. Talk with your neighbors, your family, your community. Perhaps someone in the community, like the neighbor, might have noticed the example family and mentioned that postpartum exists and that it can become more severe in 10 to 20% of women. That would have really helped that particular family, right? Get up to date on important changes in your community. Use your position in society to be at an advantage. If you sit on a board or somewhere that has power and you can be the eyes and ears for your community, do it. That is a great way to spread awareness. And overall, keeping an eye and an ear open to anything that affects you and those around you. Staying aware of your community is going to be your first action step in prevention. Next. So we have education. Learning is a lifetime event, right? We can truly never stop learning. So take trainings, webinars that are available, read articles with studies and data. I can't tell you how important it is to know the data that backs up what you're saying, because one of the first ways someone is going to test you is to ask, oh, where'd you learn that from? And so you want to be able to make sure you know that that's valid and correct. So make sure you're sharing relevant and correct information. Learn local policies and procedures, and then learn what's available in education programs in your own community. Knowing what's directly available in your area is going to be the most important, because many problems go unaddressed because of barriers such as transportation, time, and if it's right there already and you know about it, then there's little reason to not go, right? And so education, is going to be your second, and then we have guidance. Next, chat. So guidance, last step, mention best practices to others. It's super important to know how you're giving your information out to everyone. So I use here parentheses to say not best to do in crisis. Share what you know, but make sure you're doing it to your specific position. So if someone is in crisis and you're not a professional, it could do more harm than good to interject and say, well, you shouldn't have done that. That's not what we want to do. However, there are so many trainings and certificates out there that can make you as close to a professional, if not a professional, to be able to interject into those situations. So be as close to one as you can, but make sure that you are able to help them get to the true professional or resource that is available to them. Share it on forums, platforms, and joint efforts in your community. The more people involved, the higher impact that can be made. And then lastly, share information and education regarding the risk factor, and then create that protective factor to replace it. So as long as we are trying to lessen the risk or the risk factor and replace them with protective factors, we're on our way to preventing and helping each other change positively and healthy. So I will have you do next. Thank you. And so let's see, how are we doing on time? We got about 20 minutes. I think we have time. So we're going to do an activity. We are going to act it out. And so I want you to be in groups of 4. I will have Chad put you in your group rooms. And so basically what we will do is read the scenario. I'll have the scenario in the chat as well. And then you will have parts. So 3 parts, and then a 4th person will be an observer. That way they can kind of define how the situation went. So I've placed the acting roles down there toward the bottom. Pick who you'd like to be, have at least one person be the observer, and then we'll do this for about 7 minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss how your group scene played out and how it felt. So I want you to really try to set this scenario up as you are the expecting mom, or you're the neighbor, or whoever you want to be, and make sure that you're playing out the prevention action steps. So we have education, guidance, and awareness, right? And so how can that look or feel when you're actually going through it? That is what we're trying to do today. So I will go ahead and have Chad put you in your rooms. I will count out for 7 minutes, and then we will come back and discuss how that felt.
Thanks, Georgina. As a trauma-informed sort of thing, just in case you haven't been Zoomed away before in Zoom rooms, may experience some discomfort, but you can look up at your screen. There should be something that offers an opportunity for you to go to breakout room here in just a moment. And if not, I will ask you privately where you'd like to go.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah. Okay, there are a few folks here that haven't zoomed away to your breakout rooms. If you can hear me, oh, there you go. Just a second.